Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at a new Sonic video. This time we're going to be taking a look at the Jakks specific 2.5-inch Classic Sonic. Now I got this figure off of Walmart and there's a bit of a story there which I'm going to mention in a moment. This is the second time I remake this video because the first video became way too long. It was almost 17 minutes long, and after you watch it, please let me know in the comments what you think about this video, because it was becoming way too long. I just had to shorten it a lot, so I had to refilm it. But now let's take a look at Classic Sonic's packaging. First off, here we have Classic Sonic's packaging. I really like the kind of packaging the 2.5-inch figures come in, where the figure is strapped like this to the packaging, so it's very easy to remove him, and I was actually able to slip the figure out without cutting these sort of rubber straps, so that was pretty cool. Here's a render of the figure, which, interestingly enough, it's a different shade of blue than the figure itself. Maybe it's the lighting for when they took the image. And there's here another image of the wave of 2.5-inch figures this Classic Sonic is a part of. There's Classic Amy, who I have, the Buzz Bomber, who I don't have, the Modern Shadow, who I don't have, and the Modern Tails I actually do have, this exact same version. I'm not sure if I'll do a video on that one, but now that we took a look at the packaging, let's take a look at Classic Sonic himself. Here we have Classic Sonic, and I really like this figure. He's one of my favorites. He's very basic, so in that regard, I guess not that many people will think it's a good figure. And I know that it really depends on what you want out of a Classic Sonic, which option is better, because you want a larger figure or more posable Classic Sonic. People will definitely go for the modern figures that are made currently, because there's also a 4-inch Classic Sonic. And I have seen that one, and I've had the chance to buy it, but I haven't. Why? Well, it's mainly because I prefer the 2.5-inch classic figures due to many reasons. First off, I like how the more limited articulation of this one matches the sort of more classic style of the drawings, of the artwork from that time. And apart from being cheaper, there's a lot more variety of characters. As you'll see later with some size comparisons, they made quite a few other classic important characters. Well, as for the 4-inch line, the only ones they've done are Classic Dr. Eggman, Classic, and 2 other characters who are basically part of the Classic era, who never really made into the modern video games. Those being some characters which I really hope in the comments let me know if you know who they are. Those being Mighty the Armadillo and Ray the Flying Squirrel. Yeah, either you're gonna have to go Google them because you don't know who they are, or you know who they are. And I'm part of the people who didn't know who they were until the figures came out, but now I'm going to start talking about that, and I'm going to showcase the figure on the full 360. Very nicely detailed. Again, for a small figure, he's very well done. And something else I find interesting is that, unlike the 4-inch Sonic, this one actually stands very well, since, as I mentioned on my most viewed video on the channel, being the 4-inch modern Sonic, the modern Sonic has more wobbly, longer legs and a even larger head. So the figure was very top heavy. He constantly fell when it was really hard to keep standing. So I usually had to keep him very close to the backdrop. But in this case, this Classic Sonic actually stands really well. As you can see here, the slight bend that they gave to the legs make him very easy to stand. And in this case, it makes him a bit hard to pose. The 4-inch Sonic is easier to pose, hard to stand. This one is easier to stand, hard to pose. But now, speaking of posing, let's look at the articulation, which, to be honest, is not much. He has a head swivel, sort of like the 4-inch ones, and in that regard, these are basically simplified 4-inch figures, because the same arm joint is used, except it's the one that has a hand swivel or elbow joints, and with the legs, they have the same kind of way they're connected, but nothing at the knee or the foot. But they can sort of spin, so you can kind of put them in a pose like this. I don't know, it's very limited in that regard, but I do like this more limited articulation because it kind of reminds me of the limitations of the original Sega consoles. But now let's do some size comparisons. Here is 2.5-inch classic Sonic next to some other 2.5-inch classic figures, these being Tails, Metal Sonic, and Amy Rose. And these look very well next to each other. The only sort of classic characters I'm missing are Classic Knuckles and Classic Dr. Eggman, unless you count the Badniks or those other two characters I mentioned, Mighty, the Armadillo, and Ray, the Flying Squirrel. I have Ray, I'm just missing Mighty, but these look very nice next to each other. Same articulation with all of these. And I would recommend that if you want any of these figures, look for them at Walmart, where, not in the toy section, but next to the cash register, the section where you find stuff like Pokemon cards or baseball cards. I recommend looking for these in that section, next to some other 2.5-inch Jakks specific things they do, because they just don't do Sonic, they also do Mario, and they also do Disney princesses, so quite a variety there of licenses, and I can't imagine how much of a billionaire Jakks specific must be now, since they have the two most important video game characters to market, Sonic the Hedgehog and Super Mario. And overall, these classic figures look very nice next to each other. Now let's do some other Sonic comparisons. Here is classic Sonic next to one of the only other 2.5-inch modern figures I have, that being Charmy the Bee. And I do have a modern 2.5-inch Sonic, but I forgot when I left him. So this scale is kind of funny because here Charmy is meant to be on scale with the others because of how small he is. Classic Sonic, again, I do like how this kind of size works for smaller characters, such as I mentioned on my Transformers Core Class videos for characters like RC. It works to make the smaller scale for smaller characters, but it's even funny just seeing how even Charmy is smaller than Sonic. But now let's take a look at some other modern Sonic comparisons. That being modern Sonic. Now, in my original video I also used Classic Knuckles, and I'm just going to give you a quick look. There he is. But I want to focus on Sonic, because of course this is meant to be classic Sonic and modern Sonic. And they look very nice next to each other. Now, some people might think, hey, shouldn't they be around the same height since they're meant to be the same iteration, the same character, just from a different era? But here's the thing. In the video game Sonic Generations, it was shown that classic characters are meant to be shorter than modern characters. So even though both of them are Sonic, they're meant to be of a different height. Maybe classic Sonic should be slightly tall, maybe a 3-inch figure could work. But they look very nice next to each other, in my opinion. Just interesting just seeing all the massive changes, because back in the 90s, around till 1999, this was what people considered Sonic. And it wasn't until, I believe, Sonic Adventure where this design was shown, and it became Sonic himself. And now it left the other as classic Sonic. And it's interesting just seeing how they still kept the main design quirks of Sonic, but just made them edgier, as they called it back then. Stuff like the sharper blue color, the longer arms and legs, the round body, and other details which are very interesting to me looking at them now next to each other, like how the original ones only had black eyes, and something else you probably noticed on Classic Tails or Classic Amy's that they all have black eyes. Well, here Sonic has green eyes. Yeah, it's an interesting character development, okay? It's really interesting to see what 30 years did to Sonic. But now let's take a look at some non-Sonic comparisons. Like the Moose Toy Space Jam New Legacy Bugs Bunny and Lola Bunny, and this is actually, even though it's a scale that never happens, this is actually nice scaling in my opinion. As you saw with the main Sonic, the 4-inch one, the scale to me works fairly nicely next to each other because all these characters are meant to be shorter than humans, but you'll notice that in a moment, and overall, these look nice next to each other. We have classic Sonic next to the Marvel Legends, Star-Lord, and She-Hulk, and yeah, classic Sonic is a lot shorter, but to me it works. And there's not really much to say other than, even though this was never meant to be on scale and classic Sonic is noticeably smaller, I do think that the scale works pretty nicely here. And now let's take a look at a moment where the scale truly does not work. That being with some Transformers. Here is the Rise of the Beasts mainline Optimus Prime, and I just want to showcase for those who may have this figure, just to give you an idea of the height. But for another Jakks-specific comparison, here is classic Sonic next to the new recently released Metroid Samus Aran figure. And I really like this figure, and here's a bit of a story. I got this classic Sonic, the classic Metal Sonic you saw a moment ago, this Samus, and another character you'll see in a moment at the same day, at the same store, that being Walmart, on a vacation trip. So, these characters are kind of like souvenirs. And that's why they mean a lot to me, and that's why I also want to do reviews for all of them. But let's take a look at that other character, which, get ready for it. It's the Super Mario Bros. Movie 7-inch fire-breathing Bowser. I really want to get a review for this figure as soon as possible. But, yeah, this is an impressive figure, but we're getting on the topic. There is classic Sonic next to him, and he's puny in comparison. Oh my gosh, this Bowser is super, super awesome, and I can't wait to do a video on it. Again, I got this Bowser, the exact same thing I got classic Sonic, classic Metal Sonic, and Samus. But enough with this figure, we have to focus on classic Sonic now. Someday, I'll hopefully get a video for this fire-breathing Bowser out. And overall, the Jakks Pacific 2.5-inch Classic Sonic is a lot of fun. Now, there are other variants of this design. I have 3. Another one, which I forgot where I left it, is what I'd like to call the About to Fall Sonic, the Balancing Sonic, which is probably the one a lot of people have seen, or maybe even have one with like an open hand and a dangling foot. Which at first I liked that figure, but now I prefer this one because I like the more natural stand pose he has going on. Another one, which I also really like, is a 2.5 Sonic with a chili dog. That's actually one I'm not going to review because I have it in the packaging. I still haven't removed it, and I'm not planning on opening that figure because I like how it looks with the chili dog. Apart from the different arms, there's not really anything else that makes it different. So I'm not going to open that one, but here for this classic Sonic, he's very well made. He's very limited in the articulation, but I think it looks nice. And overall, I really like this classic Sonic. Please let me know in the comments what you think about this classic Sonic, and about the price, $5. He's very cheap. So again, if you want to start collecting Sonic figures, and you don't want to spend like a ton of money on them, and you don't really care much of the articulation, I recommend these classic figures, or in general 2.5 figures. They're very cheap, very affordable. In that regard, I think that's really gonna help Jakks Pacific's line. It has different prices for different interests. But that's finally it for this video. Thanks for watching. Please let me know in the comments what you think about this classic Sonic, about the other figures I showcased I'm going to do reviews for later on. But that's it for this video. Thanks for watching.